Europe sleepwalking into a war with Russia. Venezuela's threatening a second Vietnam. North Korea's chest bumping the United States like a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. In D.C., arguing over who pressed the drone button. We're watching global powers draw lines in real time. And the U.S. is positioned smack dab in the middle of three potential conflicts that could ignite all at one time. And the craziest part is the media's only job right now is to keep you distracted long enough so you don't ask why all this is happening at the same time. Tonight, we're going deep. Russia, Venezuela, North Korea, narco-terrorism, China's long game, and why suddenly some people discovered the idea of war crimes this week like it's a new iPhone feature. If I disappear after this video, just know, check Karen Levitt's inbox. So let's break this down for you. A lot is going on. Putin, because what he said this week changes everything. Okay? Check it out.
Said that 100 times. We have no plans of fighting against Europe. But if Europe wants to fight and they start this fight, then we are ready right now. There is no doubt about this. But the only question is, if Europe starts the war, unleashes this war, because that's not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we use some surgical means. We are trying to be really careful. Because you understand why. This is not a war in the direct sense of the word. And Europe, all of a sudden, wants to start a war. And if it does start a war, then very rapidly there might be a situation where we have no one to negotiate with.
So Putin stated that Russia doesn't want a war with Europe, but is fully prepared for one. He even called the strikes on Ukraine surgical, okay? My guy, surgical is what I call shaving with a straight razor, not a multi-year war. But the message is clear. Europe, you do not want to escalate this. The Western media has spun it like Putin is rattled, Putin is scared. No. Putin is saying if this goes direct, it won't be conventional. If you get what I mean. And here's the problem. Europe thinks they're invincible because America is always the safety net. Except you have to understand America's juggling Russia, Venezuela, North Korea, China, the border collapse problem we've been in, economic instability, and internal political war. And you can say whatever you want. We are in an internal political war. One might say civil war. They just hadn't went full liberty and concord yet. Lexington and Concord. We're one bad decision away from a geopolitical dogpile. And speaking of bad decisions, let's talk about the Caribbean powder keg nobody was paying attention to until last week. Venezuela. The U.S. has positioned 11 warships, one nuclear-powered carrier, 15,000 troops, all within striking distance to Caracas, the largest buildup since the Panama invasion in 1989. Maduro responded stating a second Vietnam, okay? Threatening a second Vietnam. And as a Marine, whenever someone says Vietnam, I don't think about jungles. I think about politicians who had no idea what the hell they were doing. Then we have North Korea. Yes, North Korea steps in and says, you know what, man, you're not alone. This is Kim Jong-un basically saying that if U.S. touches you, we're going to be getting involved. North Korea is a wild card. He might send troops. He might send a fax that says, good luck. Nobody really knows. But here's the part nobody's connecting. Is Venezuela is basically a China-Russia joint custody child. China owns their debt, their oil futures and half their digital infrastructures. Russia arms their military, trains their intelligence forces, and maintains deep influence through Cuba. So if the U.S. invades Venezuela, we're not invading Venezuela. We're poking Russia, China, Iran, North Korea in the ribs all at once. And meanwhile, Venezuelan gangs have already infiltrated the U.S. border. Tren de Aragua isn't a conspiracy. It's a police report in half the country. The war's already here. They're just wearing jeans and fake ID, and they have fake IDs. Okay. And we've got out a lot of the, I saw a college girl, 19 years old, they got deported the other day, going to go see her mom for Thanksgiving, college student. We've got out some college students, some landscapers, but I hadn't seen much on Tren de Aragua. So those operatives are still here. And make no mistake, Venezuela sent them here for that purpose. Okay, these guys are criminal, one of the largest criminal organizations in the world. Now, let's talk about the story that shouldn't be everywhere, right? That should be everywhere, and it isn't, right? The alleged U.S. war crime involving a U.S. strike on a suspected narco-terrorist boat. Okay. Reports say the strike hits vessel, survivors in the water, second strike ordered. Media labels it a war crime before the dust even settles. The White House pushes blame to JSOC Admiral, right here, JSOC Admiral Bradley. Said he was the one who gave the order. Other people are saying it's Pete Hegseth, right? They're saying Hegseth gave the green light, right? Then Karen Levitt gets asked about it. Her response, it was within guidelines. Reporters are trying to twist it into you can't strike survivors of a wreckage. Okay, check it out.
Tell us about that strike. He just said U.S. operations in the area were lawful, and he said that the story and media reports were fabricated. So to be clear, does the administration deny that that second strike happened, or did it happen and the administration denies that Secretary Hegseth gave the order?
The latter is true, Abe, and I have a statement to read for you here. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
To clarify, Admiral Bradley was the one who gave that order for a second strike.
And he was well within his authority to do so.
Venezuela strike. You said that that second strike was in full accordance with the law of armed conflict, but the Navy's own manual of law of war says that specifically firing on survivors from a wrecked vessel is an example of a war crime that's forbidden under U.S. law and the law of armed conflict. So how was that second strike in following law of armed conflict and then second on immigration?
Again, Andrew, I would reiterate to you the strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law.
So language is important here. Language is important because it wasn't wreckage. This was an active narco-terrorist threat. Words matter, definitions matter. But war crime trends better than bad guys got hit twice. So here we are. And suddenly DC cares about killing survivors in an active drug trafficking scenario or threat scenario. That's rich. It really is. Because if we want to talk about drone strikes on survivors, let me remind you, an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki, was killed by a drone strike in Yemen in 2011. 2 weeks later, his 16-year-old son, who also an American citizen, was killed in another drone strike. Two American citizens, no trial, no due process, no impeachment talk, no media outrage, no congressional meltdown, no hashtags, no candlelight vigils, nothing. So, excuse me if I don't buy the sudden morale awakening over what happened in the Caribbean. It's wild. If you let a government kill one American citizen without a trial, what you're really saying is they can do it to all of us. And the problem is this is exactly why Venezuela matters more than people thinks. Okay. Now, here's actually how it would most likely play out. Not what this media says, and definitely not what politicians pretend. Scenario one, the U.S. hits Venezuela. North Korea then fires missile tests in support. Russia surges in Europe. China threatens economic retaliation, maybe jumps into Taiwan. Iran uses proxy groups. The cartel launches chaos across the border. The Venezuelan infiltrators activate inside the U.S. cities. They're here. They were sitting here for a reason. We also have the hundreds of thousands of Chinese operatives that came across the border as well. So then cyber attacks hit U.S. infrastructure because we've already heard that they've pretty much hacked everything. Global markets tank. This is fourth generation warfare. It will not start with nukes. It doesn't need them. Starts with chaos, sabotage, and denial. Scenario two, the U.S. doesn't act. We just stay idle. China then establishes military presence in the Caribbean. Russia gets their leverage. Venezuela becomes a regional fortress. Cartel power expands. The U.S. loses hemispheric dominance. BRICS gains massive influence. Truly, this whole thing is a lose-lose unless leadership actually has a strategy. And right now, D.C. is running on vibes and press briefings with influencers. Because whether you are for this situation or not, you're pretty much backed in a corner. You want regional dominance here. You do. But again, did we let it get so far collectively, the American government, the uniparty rhinos, they let it get so far that we've reached this point in time where it's almost a lose-lose. But if we look at China's long game, right? China really doesn't want Venezuela to win. They don't care about it. It's not important to them. What's important is China wants America stuck, okay? China wants America drained. Why do you think the Russian and Ukraine fiascos lasted so long? Because it's draining U.S. stockpiles. Why do you think there's so much bot activity coming from China into the U.S.? Why do you think China wants us involved in Venezuela? China wants America so busy in the Caribbean and in Europe that the Pacific becomes wide open. Venezuela is their Cuba 2.0, their foothold, their base, their leverage. And if U.S. invades Venezuela, China then gets global justification to escalate economically, diplomatically, or even militarily without firing the first shot. Okay? So it's a lot to think about. Now, if we circle back to Russia, Europe is inching toward confrontation. Putin has warned them. And alongside that, the U.S. is inching toward confrontation with Venezuela. Maduro warned us. North Korea is inching toward confrontation with the U.S. And Kim, well, he didn't warn anybody. He just likes pressing buttons. Meanwhile, our government is juggling drone strike blame games, the bureaucratic left versus right nonsense in the press briefing rooms, CNN running hit pieces, and Fox News and everybody else. It's all a media circus. It's all happening real time. We have the auto pen legal debates, internal political wars, and if you're blind to this, this is what's happening currently in the U.S. There's an internal political conflict. And when I did a video the other day about Rome falling and America, basically the same simulation is happening, is that America will never come together again. If you believe that, you're dreaming. If you believe that whatever your party is, left and right, because I used to believe in that too, but that they're ever going to actually take dominance over and get you everything you want, it's not going to happen, because unfortunately, the true people that are running this country are at Langley, the FBI headquarters, APAC in another country. They're also big pharma, big military, right? AI now, big tech. So all those guys are actually the ones running this country. The puppets in office from president down are just there like a WWE. I mean, it really is. It's nothing more to keep you involved, keep you stoked into the left versus right, and that your team's going to maybe win. It's kind of like how the NFL, they say, is all the games are scripted. They let you have a win one time. This guy has a win. This party has a win. Oh, now the right has taken back the office. But then really no legislation actually happens that benefits American people. Only spending money in foreign countries or stock options that line their pockets, right? The border was overtaken, which has tied up resources, tied up money, and created a situation where we are now having to increase the demand of officers to try to get out these people. Now, for the past 10 months, we focused on the nonviolent criminals that came across the border, right? Because this crime to come across the border illegally. But we went after the nonviolent ones. Now that we've just had a few episodes of violence, now we're looking at maybe going after those guys, you know. But people are cheering because, hey, we're getting people out. This is what the world looks like when global powers know U.S. leadership is divided, distracted, and disorganized, because that's exactly what it is. It's completely disorganized, divided, and they will never come together. And they will never come together because coming together would benefit you as an American, because if they put their differences aside and say, hey, what's best for the hardworking blue-collar Americans, all this other bullshit would go out the window. Okay. Now, another big piece is that Trump just declared that any documents signed by AutoPen under the last administration are null and void. Now, I would truly like to know the percentage of this. Okay. I would like to know the percentage of AutoPen signatures, because I would say it'd probably be quite alarming, because from what I understand is that Joe Biden was not really in cognitive state to make any real decisions. So therefore, you had 25-year-olds running in there in the AutoPen passing legislation. Hence why all the DEI and that kind of nonsense was going through, because you had interns essentially playing the role of the president. But we're talking about executive orders, memorandums, pardons, commutations, contracts, the whole nine. They were hitting it right and left. All void, according to Trump now. So my question is simple. That is great. But now are we actually holding anyone accountable? That's the real question. Will anyone be really held accountable now? Because now those pardons are gone. Because if Fauci isn't answering questions before Congress, if Milley isn't answering questions before Congress or being put in handcuffs, if nobody faces consequences, then it's just another headline, another meme. I'm tired of the headlines and memes. I'm tired of the Truth social post. I want to see actions. America doesn't need more announcements. America needs justice. Get rid of all the bad actors, all the deep state operatives, all the people that have worked to destroy this country. And that goes on both sides of the aisle. ladies and gentlemen. It does. Lindsey Graham, anyone who has never seen a country he didn't want a carpet bomb? We're entering a world where the battlefield is digital, political, psychological, economic, and spiritual. We don't start with rockets anymore. See, a lot of people have this dream that it's going to be Red Dawn in the Senate. That's old tech. Remember how the British soldier used to line up and reload the musket? No, that's old days. Old days. They start with confusion. And in confusion, the men who thrive are the ones who are stable, prepared, disciplined, mentally armored, spiritually grounded, the ones that are truly hard to kill. I saw last night a guy commenting, said, nobody's actually ever going to do nothing. Look, I've game played every scenario in my mind. I think I'm not completely a moron, okay? Maybe a little bit, but not completely an idiot. And I just don't see how any of these things would actually move the needle, right? But the thing I talk about on this channel all the time, you have to start small, start local. That's what the deep state did. They moved up into the positions of power, right? But truthfully, has it gone too far? Has it gone too far to change the course? I personally probably think it has. Biblically speaking, I probably think it has. I would say we're probably close to the end days. I can't predict, not even going to try to, but man, the stars are aligning, if you get what I mean. So in my opinion, you have to be the man your family looks to when the world is shaking, right? You're not the one waiting for someone else to fix it, because I think a lot of people want to vote in someone else to fix it. They want to call 911 when the bad guy comes. You have to be able to fix the problem. You have to be the one, right? You have to be that guy or that woman, right? I've broke this down 100 times. Start small, build your tribe, get into your local communities, run for sheriff, your school board, the whole nine, run for your local office, get in positions of power, get the financial warfare protocol. It'll tell you everything up to black swan events. It will tell you how to get prepared. Look, the Gray Man book is great. Great. Gray Man 1 and 2 is phenomenal. Phenomenal. You need all three. But the financial warfare protocol is the one, the most important one. It doesn't have a coolest name, but it is the one. I go through the whole nine. How to start today. Okay? Mentally, financially, spiritually, and physically. The whole nine. Get prepared. But I also plan to come out with something soon called the Black Scout Protocol. This will be my most intensive one yet. And I'm probably going to do like a video format. But I'm going to go through the whole gamut of these things. And that way I can at least get the information out. And also, just so you know, if you're part of this channel, part of the tribe, if you're at commando level, you get the Watchman film, home defense, home security film for free. I teach you CQB, single man CQB. I teach you how to armor your castle, your house, how to prevent, and if they do breach, how to go ahead and neutralize that threat. I show you exactly how to do all that, and it's free to our commando level subscribers. But also, before I go, I want to talk about, because it's Christmas coming up, just some stocking stuffer stuff. Today we're dropping some titanium products, titanium flask. You know, you always got to have a little flask with you. And this has the little pour cup there, so you can put, you know, your coffee in it, your espresso on the go. Also, the strike bar tool. This is a EDC pocket tool, basically to protect your knife. Okay, has a pry bar, bottle opener, as well as a bit driver there. Clips in your pocket, so that way. And then also, because everything's a weapon, right? That's how we live. But a few other things too is we got the Jungle Camo Nalgene bottles. They're back in stock. That's the new one. The last one's Desert. You can get the Doc Box first aid. These are all lower price items. But the Doc Box, that way you can have your first aid stuff. You can add stuff to it, but keep it in your man bag, your purse, your glove compartment. Water filters, our Commando water filter. I think these things are, if you buy 3, you get like a discount. They want to be real cheap. So those, and obviously lights, the Photon light. Photon is American-made product. Photon is a brand I've been using since Marine Corps days, and we sell white and red. You can keep it on your keychain, keep it around your neck, especially the red one. I talk about it in Gray Man Protocol. And then obviously our pocket EDC fire starter, so that way you can always have a way to start fire on your person. But I just want to share those. That way, you know, I started Black Scout as a company, product company. Me making these videos happen organically because I used to show my products and teach survival and tactical skills, combatives and stuff. But whenever the world started going dark, I thought I had to do something, right? So that's why I do this. And I want you, you know, just stay alert, stay trained, stay armored inside and out, because the world has already changed, right? And most people are just late noticing it, right? And that's why I always say to stay frosty, stay strapped, stay dangerous. I'm Black Scout Survival, and I'll see you in the next one. Black Scout out.
2, 3. 1, 2.